to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ladies and gentlemen, back on the program, Chi Ossé, representing Brooklyn, New York. What district in Brooklyn?
The 36, Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights.
Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, and you are a councilman.
I am a city council member.
That's a big deal.
Thank you very much.
How many of those seats exist?
There are 51, and I represent the 36 in Central Brooklyn.
Now, this is Ebro in the Morning. Laura Stiles Rosenberg is still recovering honeymoon.
Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes. He's on his honeymoon.
Chi now has grown up in front of our eyes and has a mustache.
Yeah, I do have a mustache now.
But you've been in politics now how long? Like in the city council? Well, before the city council, it was
2020 was my first year involved in politics. This was the first show that I was on to announce my run for office.
And now we've seen you do so much activity, even more recently, you leading the charge to make sure you kept these rent prices in check.
Yeah.
Talk about that day where we saw you on stage, basically storming the stage with other city council folks, residents of the community to hold, I guess, the decision. I don't know who the decision makers are in this rent increase thing, but them accountable, basically saying that they were being criminal with how much they wanted to increase it.
Yeah, so the rent is too damn high. We all know that in New York City, and the rent seems to be getting higher each year after each year. In New York, there's a rent guidelines board, which is a mayoral appointed board of 9 individuals who decide how much rent goes up for folks that are living in rent-stabilized apartments.
And not to cut you off, our current mayor is heavily supported by big real estate.
Yes. I mean, what oil is to Texas, real estate is to New York City. Money runs our politics on the highest level, which is the mayorality of our city. The Rent Guidelines Board has a power to increase rents for those who are living in rent-stabilized apartments. So those are over 50% of tenants and renters in New York City. And I've had enough. You know, I'm tired of working for government and being told that there's only so much that we can do to keep people in their homes. I represent Bed-Stuy, which saw the largest displacement of Black people over the past 10 years here in New York.
That's right.
So I'm trying to do everything in my power to protest, to speak up, to get people engaged in the political and democratic process, to push back against the increase in rent that won't only affect rent-stabilized tenants, but of course, what would follow after that is those that are living in market rate apartments.
Yeah, and young renters coming to the city for new jobs.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot on this show, just, frankly, with our limited sophistication as it pertains to the things you just mentioned, but just how this city isn't really designed for regular everyday people, middle, lower income, and honestly would like to see much of those people go because they want either the rent-controlled spaces to not be rent-controlled. They want the NYC buildings to be converted into condos because they have prime real estate. You have congestion pricing coming. You have MTA fares going up, bridges, tolls, parking. I mean, you just keep getting smacked. There's just so many ways for them to siphon money out of you, right? I mean, that it is just not intended. So I often wonder how people are surviving and getting by here. And you being on the ground and working with people, what do you see people doing to survive? Yeah,
I mean, people are working 3 jobs. Like there are so many New Yorkers that have, multiple industries that they're working in. My issue is that New York City is a popular city because of creatives and artists, right? The fact that the artist cannot be a starving artist in New York City anymore is outrageous, right? We've created this beautiful city with diverse cultures that have shined a light on, people that want to come here. Yet those very people are being pushed out, and everyday New Yorkers are being pushed out as well. It's really terrible to see how people are struggling and how little the government on the macro is really doing to keep people in their homes, to give them the wages they deserve, to give them the healthcare plans that they need. And again, I and several of my colleagues are really trying to do everything in our power, whether it's storming and taking the stage at the Rent Guidelines Board meeting, whether it's making TikToks to get people to come out and testify at these meetings. We're really doing everything in our power, even though the powers that exist are telling us that we have limitations.
I saw a video on Twitter where you went on the subway to talk to people about a bill that you're you're pushing,
Yeah.
the bill to that would whoever hires a broker
Yeah.
in New York, whether it's the landlord or the individual, would have to pay that fee. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so a couple months ago, I introduced a bill called the FAIRE Act, which means Fairness in Apartment Rental Expenses Act. 9 times out of 10, when you're a tenant looking for a new apartment in the city, you'll find an apartment yourself on Street Easy through word of mouth of a friend. You're ready to move in, the rent's already crazy, and then you're hit with this broker fee. A broker that you never hired, a broker that you never met, a broker that your landlord hired to get you into their apartment. And these fees can range from 15 to 20% of your annual rent. So when you're moving
That
into an
should
apartment,
absolutely be paid for by the person who owns the building and is trying to get you.
It used to be like 1 month's rent, and now all of a sudden it went to like, I've never even seen 15%. I've seen 20% of what your year's rent would be. Who can afford that on top of like, the security and everything else you have to do?
say you're paying $2,500 a month for a 1-bedroom, which is how much rents usually are in my community. You have to pay first month's rent, security deposit, and then that broker fee. You're paying $10,000 just to try to move into an apartment. This is not feasible for single parents who are trying to get out of unsafe living conditions. For those who are living paycheck to paycheck, it's putting another strain on our housing crisis as is. So this bill would require that whomever hires the broker pays the broker fee. And funny enough, of course, there's pushback against that from the Real Estate Board of New York.
Well, and the Real Estate Board has Mayor Adams here.
Yep, they fund his campaign. I know he's raised millions of dollars already for re-election. They have the money to lobby against this, to spread lies about legislation that helps the working class or helps every single New Yorker that needs a little bit of levity.
And you said there's how many city council seats? 50?
They're 51.
51. Of the 51, how many support how you're moving in this bill?
So we have 18 co-sponsors on the bill and 2 sponsors from the Brooklyn Borough President, Antonio Reynoso, and the Queens Borough President, Donovan Richards. We are really trying to get to that majority of 26, trying to get the word out.
So what's holding up the next 8?
A lot of work has to come out on my part in explaining the bill to some of my colleagues. As soon as I introduced the bill, the Real Estate Board of New York put out all of these lies about what this bill would include, whether it was going to cap broker fees, which is not what it's trying to do, whether it's going to, ban brokers from ever existing. I myself hired a broker to find an apartment, but that doesn't mean someone who does not have the means should be forced to hire a broker to find themselves an apartment.
And furthermore, that broker fee should somehow, I feel like it should come from the person who's benefiting from the rental, not the renter.
Yeah.
Right? The person who's profiting off the whole thing is the owner of the building. Why wouldn't they pay that fee, or at least a portion of that fee? Why couldn't it be a split fee or something like that?
There's such a thing as when you're, because living in New York a long time, the no fee apartments, when people have to be like, look, I remember being a student being like, I can only afford no fee apartments, which means that the landlord pays for that fee. But that also limits you to the type of apartment that you can get. And that's, I always feel like that's how it should be.
Yeah, and only 22% of the housing stock is no fee apartments. So, the rest of these apartments you're being forced to pay a broker fee.
If we're being honest, we know that as much as New York City tries to parade itself as a progressive city, and in many ways it is relative to other cities, it's very much a financial center. It's very much money first, and it's very much a cash grab, right? And there's a lot of corruption here. There's a lot of side deals. There's a lot of criminal activity, if we're being honest, that takes place at the expense of people who are just trying to get by, right?
Absolutely.
And almost makes it unlivable, which makes me say to myself, this is going to come to a bad and sad end in some way of what New York City is, or what their expectation is. Because, I work in and around the entertainment business, and somehow rich people think people got a lot more money than they do. Like even the concerts that these artists are rolling out, it's like, how much money do you think people have to go to a fucking concert? And how many concerts, from festivals to Drake to Taylor to Beyonce to hundreds of dollars to go to all of these shows, and then they just keep rolling out concerts like people have endless cash. It's not the truth.
And people forget also about, because there's so many. But like, for instance, in my neighborhood, I have noticed that there's they do like the local community center does like a food pantry. The line of senior citizens that I see there every weekend has gotten so big. I've seen it progressively get bigger and bigger. Seniors. So seniors cannot afford to live on their own. let alone feed themselves.
Right.
That they have to make these lines in the heat that drives me. I mean, I get so angry because they're neglecting the seniors.
Yeah, and it's wild because we hear a lot about crime in the city. And how we should fund, the police more and more year in and year out. But crime will only get worse if more people continue to go out on the streets or do not have the means to continue living. I mean, over the past year and a half, I've been funding projects in my neighborhood to build affordable home ownership opportunities for folks. We just completed the funding for a project for low-income housing to be built within our neighborhood. We're pushing this project that has been delayed for a long time that would build 2 100% affordable housing units under the Bed-Stuy housing plan. There's so much that can be done. However, there are limitations when we hear this dichotomy between safety and housing, when housing and funding housing truly creates safety within a city.
That's right.
Right.
And also opportunity creates
Absolutely.
safety, and jobs create safety. And I just, look, I'm so thankful for people like yourself and even Laura Stiles, man, because at my old ass age, I get tired of people lying. Like, when I was your age, it was optimism. We can find a better way. As you get older, you start being like, yo, these they don't care.
Yeah.
Like, we don't care about our neighbors. We're not willing to do the work to take care of our neighbors. We're not willing to do the work to keep things livable.
Yeah.
There's this scramble in our society for everybody to be at the top of the food chain, right? And in the midst of that, the amount of people who get left behind, broken homes, incarcerated, like mental health, all of the, I guess I would say, the collateral damage of this capitalistic race, this high-speed chase that we're on. For some reason, people can't grasp, like, yo, slow the fuck down.
Yeah. And, I want to respond to a point that you made about everyone's under this guise that New York City is this progressive bastion when it comes to cities. And I think we are when it comes to, social thinking, when it comes to queer rights or trans rights, black and brown folks, whatever. But we really lose ourselves when it comes to fiscal progressivism. Money is what is hurting all of our communities. And no one wants to have that conversation about the amount of money
or the lack of money that's available to support.
Absolutely. I think we're seeing that, from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Where they agree on is
getting rich,
right? And hurting those that, who are not rich, or even the shrinking middle class. It
is definitely, we live in a very classist city. There's racism here for sure. I mean, it's America, so it is what it is. I mean, it's planet Earth, so it is what it is. But as far as classism, we got it bad.
Yeah. And no one wants to talk about classism, right? And how class is the greatest unifier for pushing us all forward, right? I think race is something that needs to be talked about always, even in those conversations about labor movements and about class as a whole. But when we really have the opportunity to sit down and talk about how we're all being screwed by these major corporations, by big money, that will truly push us forward and get us to where we need to be. And that's why we're seeing a hot labor summer right now, right? We're seeing actors on strike.
Is that the title?
That's the title, yeah. We're seeing actors on strike, writers on strike. Grindr employees just went on strike. UPS just won their contract. When Reagan was president, he did a lot to try to kill the labor movement, but it's coming back because people have had enough. And I hope that everyone who does not think that this affects them starts to wake up and realize that it really does,
Well, corporations and Wall Street and the stock market, they love when people get laid off. They love when productivity remains high and workforce.
They're cutting costs.
And they're cutting costs, saving money, what do they call it? Headcount. They love not increasing headcount or reducing headcount so the stock value goes up. They love it. And so I hope people are awake to the fact that these corporations, they got to make their money, and they're going to make their money with or without you. They're going to figure out a way around you too.
And if that's the case, then people need to start organizing their workplaces, right?
Yeah.
Start a labor union, do some research on how to start a labor union, because we have power in numbers, if we're communicating with, our coworkers who are dealing with the same struggles that we're talking about with this housing crisis, with unfair, working conditions, then we need to organize all together to push back against these very corporations that are hurting us all.
And I encourage everybody to watch for the jukes, because here's what always happens. Union workers fight for better wages, better medical, better pension, more protections, et cetera, et cetera. The corporation then increases the cost to the consumer. then blames the workers.
Right.
However, the corporation and the heads of the corporation never took pay cuts, never skipped their bonuses,
Right.
never any of that took place. But they'll make the consumer believe that it's the worker's fault.
Yes, yes. We see it all the time.
That's like some of the lies that Rebney pushes out, right? When it comes to this broker fee bill, they're saying that because we're trying to make whoever hires the broker pay the broker fee, which in every single other industry, where else do you hire something, order something, buy something, not buy something, and someone else has to pay for it, right? That doesn't exist in every other case. But, they're saying that because of this broker fee bill, landlords are going to put the broker fee within the annual rent. And even if that was the case, $5,000 over the span of 12 or 24 months is not as bad as $5,000 up front. But in many cases, that won't happen. And that's, a fear-mongering tactic to, again, dispel something that will help working class and just New Yorkers at large.
So, Chi, before we let you up out of here, you sitting at City Council. Outside of this, it's called the FAIRE Act, which is your specific kind of endeavor at this moment, amongst the other things you talked about. What else, as New Yorkers, should we be paying attention to in this moment that we may not have on our radar, that you're like, yo, I know I'm on this FAIRE Act because this is something specific to, Bed-Stuy and what's going on there, but what else should we be paying attention to?
I mean, I think the largest thing that I want from people, and I'm obviously focused on the FAIRE Act, is just people to be paying attention to who their local elected officials are, right? I think we're all hung up on national politics, and we should be engaged and aware of what's happening politically on every single level. But I think that we could regain trust between the people and democracy if people are paying attention to what's happening in their local district with their council member, their local state senator. If you're participating in those elections, we will see the tangible changes that I think will make people believe in democracy again.
And are you like me? Because I believe, especially here in New York City and New York State, that it is intentionally made difficult to keep track of all of the different elections and different things taking place. Like there doesn't feel like there's any synergy or sort of cadence when it comes to the different elections taking place. Is that?
I think it's a mix. I think some people could think that it's a farce or intentional, but I do believe that a lot of people don't care, right? And I think that's
apathetic.
Decades and years of not caring and a lack of political education within schools and whatnot. I mean, we were never taught in school how often elections were and who to vote for and who your local representatives are. I never learned that, right? So I think there's like a systemic problem to it. But at the same time, a lot of people are disappointed by what's happening in government on mainly the national level. You hear Democrats saying they're going to do all of this for you, but then there's this muck that exists on the federal level that makes it hard for anything to get done. So, of course, people are apathetic, but at the same time, we need more political education, more reasons for people to want to feel engaged, to come out and vote in elections. There's an election 2 times a year. Every single year, right? A primary and a general election. But most people don't know that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was today years old. His name is Chi Ossé. Go ahead. What were we going to say?
I mean, the last thing I will say, but the candidates that always win because of how frequent those elections are the ones that are being funded by these same people that are
the real estate
are working against everything
hedge
that
fund,
we care about.
Wall
Absolutely.
Street, big money. They sprinkle a couple dollars on them, and they get the big marketing. They make all the noise by the radio ads.
It's easy for the local politics. It's easy to win those races when you have that money.
Well, I will say this. Congratulations to you and the work that you're doing. I think it's really important that people follow you on social media, because I believe that you break things down very simple.
Thank you.
For people to get to the heart of the problem so they can understand how to vote and what's happening in the city. So I think you're doing a great job when it comes to that, at least getting the information out.
I appreciate that. And thank you for always having me on. Again, this was the first show that I announced my candidacy on in 2020. You gave me a chance.
Look, it was, we had you in 2020, and I think 2018 was Ocasio-Cortez, right? That was 2018.
Yeah.
She was up here before she was on anyone's radar. Jamal Bowman, also another one that we were big supporters of, and even Alvin Bragg. I think when he was just getting his candidacy together, his little run together.
And it was great to see, Dr. Yusuf Salam. It was great to see him.
Absolutely. And they're coming after every single person you listed. All that big money is coming after every single one of those people.
That's why Eric Adams won't come up here.
He won't.
We've tried that. We've tried everything to have him on, but you know, we don't hold our tongue when it comes to talking about the NYPD and them being held accountable for their shit. I mean, just recently with the woman chief of police stepping down after only a year on the job, and the word came out that she wanted to take what the CCRB said were the people and hold them accountable, and she got pushback, and they basically pushed her out and encouraged her to step down. And now I think it's awesome that we have the first Latin American, chief of police up there. I think that's great. But is he just carrying water?
Right.
Or is he actually gonna,
I think, and I just had an interview about this, it's really disappointing to see I guess this mayor and a lot of top Democrats and their approach to police reform. I think since 2020, a lot of them were scared of the fear mongering that came from the right about the words defund the police. Whether you had one take on it or the other, reallocating funds, investing into mental health services. And now you see no appetite for police reform in the Democratic Party. And people are just turning a blind eye and allowing them to free reign. And I believe that there needs to be some level of reform, some level of reallocation of funds, some level of order and accountability. I think in its simplest
form, I know everybody tried to frame defund the police as this mantra, and it was basically bad words. But just simply the idea that we ask police to do too much, like our expectation of their capabilities is way too high.
And they're also, listen.
They have expertise.
Eric Adams in November of 2020 said he supported defunding the police. So, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but that doesn't fit the narrative right now.
Right.
And that's definitely not what's happening. Yo, give it up for Chi Ossé, Brooklyn, New York.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much. And check out the FAIRE Act.